welcome firstly to the 2021 Community Creator Artist in Residence Program and information session. Now this information session is both for our local artists as well as our local businesses as well. So hopefully you'll both sort of parties involved in this program, which is very exciting for us to get this program together. We'll be able to, hopefully all those questions will be answered in this session here. And as I said, we are recording this session, so it will be made available on our website and Arts Moreland YouTube channel later on. You know, so feel free to share that with anyone that you think might be interested to have a look around. Okay, so before I begin, I do want to just acknowledge the traditional custodians on the land on which we meet. I'm currently on the land of the Wurundjeri Woiwurrung and Bunurong peoples of the Kulin Nation, and I pay my respects to their elders past, present and emerging, their cultural heritage, their beliefs and continuing relationship with the land. And I acknowledge, as was rightly pointed out this morning, in the lead up to what we know as Australia Day, that Aboriginal sovereignty was never ceded. So this coming weekend is not a happy celebration for everyone in this country. I'd also like to extend that respect to other First Nations people who are present here today. So what is the purpose of the Community Creator Artist in Residence program? So this program came about as from a community member, one of our Moreland community members, who approached council through the budget processes. And so over the last couple of months, we've taken that approved funding and developed this brand new program for Moreland. It is quite a tight turnaround, as we'll see in the next the next few slides. But that is because we have had such a long sort of developmental stage to get this process up and running, and to make sure that we kind of addressed all of the potential, you know, complexities of a program such as this. As I said, it is the first one that we know of that's a combination and a relationship between artists and businesses. So we have sort of gathered lots of information and feedback from other similar artists in residence, but this one is brand new and we are very excited about it. So the Community Creator Artist in Residence program was designed to assist our local Moreland artists and business community organisations to recover from the COVID-19 lockdowns, which obviously has had an enormous impact on our local communities. It's a creation of a matched artistic residency program that's providing a short-term employment opportunity for artists and creative solutions for businesses and community organisations in our local Moreland municipality. Pardon me. So we're looking at supporting 5 projects. So 5 local artists will be matched with 5 local businesses or community organisations, and we will then, the artists and the businesses will co-design and deliver a creative response to an existing challenge faced by the businesses or community organisations through an artistic process, artistic project or a set of activities in early 2021. So the objectives of the program obviously is to create a short-term employment opportunity for local artists. Again, we acknowledge how much you've all been impacted by COVID-19, by, you know, arts and culture sort of grinding to a halt. You know, lovely to see some new growth there over the last sort of month or two, but, you know, it's still a significant impact that it's had, and we're working sort of towards finding ways that we can assist you as our local artists. We also see it as an opportunity for artists to collaborate with other members of our community outside of the arts sector. So, you know, with businesses, with community organisations, with community groups, and we hope that this will actually build on your professional development and perhaps skills growth as well, in terms of more skills that you can bring to your artistic practice. We hope to provide artists with the time and space to develop work and creatively explore new ideas in partnership with the businesses and communities, organisations that you'll be working with. It's obviously also a very important support mechanism for our local businesses and community organisations who have also faced challenges during COVID-19. So again, you know, it's a twofold program where we're hoping to build community, build relationships, and make it work for artists, businesses, and the wider community as well. So in doing this, we hope that we can strengthen the capacity of local artists and build business community organisations. And this will then look at new ways of partnerships and engagement. So, you know, think outside the square as we go through the slides today, and think about projects that can be something that is a little bit different to what you might do as a regular, you know, whatever that might be, arts project. So obviously, again, as I mentioned, we are creatively looking to address a need in the community, to build connection and engagement through community-led arts and cultural activities, and of course to support and encourage more people to engage with arts and culture in Moreland, which is always something that we feel is very important. So the application categories, it's a two-stage application process. At the moment, we are in the 2-week professional artists expression of interest period. So that opened on Monday and closes next Sunday, which is Sunday the 31st of January. This program's open to emerging, mid-career and established artists, and you can choose to work in partnership with one other artist if you want to do a sort of co-artistic project, or as a sole independent artist. The second stage of this is the registered businesses and community organisations application process. So this is for organisations, not-for-profit businesses, small companies and local community organisations. Regardless of whether you're an artist or a local business, all applications will go through our Moreland City Council Smarty Grants administration platform, and you will see when you get there that there are 2 different forms, one for artists and one for businesses. So that's good. I think we can all read that. In terms of eligibility requirements for artists, it is for professional artists. Again, as I said, emerging, mid-career or established. You must be a Moreland resident. As a professional artist, your primary business is in the art sector, and this can include any art form, whether it be literature, music, theatre, community arts, Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander arts, dance, circus, whatever that might be, whatever your art form is, it's open as long as it is in the art sector and it is professional. The other thing that we need to know is that you don't have any outstanding grant acquittals or outstanding debts owing to council that will make you ineligible. Eligibility for businesses. You need to be a registered business or a community organisation operating within Moreland. So with that, you may have your head office in a suburb outside of Melbourne, but you need to be working within Moreland. So whether that be a sub-branch here or that you have programs here, but we really need to see that you've got an existing connection to the Moreland community and people within our local community. Businesses and community organisations also need to have 1 full-time employee, so that's the minimum. And this is to assist us in ensuring that the lines of communication and support between the artist, between the business and between council have got someone who can remain continuous throughout this program. So it's really important that there is 1 full-time employee at least. The organisation also needs to be able to nominate a dedicated project coordinator. So I'll actually talk a little bit more about that a little bit later. But this project coordinator is the main point of contact between the artist, the business and Moreland Council, and they will oversee the residency project and be the main support person for the artist as well. So this is a crucial role. The other eligibility requirements, the business needs to have a minimum 20 million public liability insurance. You need to have again, no outstanding grant acquittals or outstanding debts owing to council, and must address one or more of the objectives of the Community Creator Artist in Residence program. Role of the project coordinator. So this project coordinator doesn't need to be full-time, but they do need to be someone who has the capacity to be that link pin between, as I said, the artist business and council. So during the business application process, the application will need to actually nominate a staff member to act as that project coordinator. It needs to also be filled by a paid staff member. And again, this is about equality and, you know, ensuring that we're not paying an artist a fee and then expecting someone else to work as a volunteer in that support role. So it does need to be filled by a paid staff member. But as I said, it could be a part-time or a full-time, depending on the role's requirements. I'll talk a little bit more about what the artists and businesses receive, but in terms of the project coordinator, the administration fee that you'll be allocated, which, as I said, I'll talk about a little bit later, you're welcome to use that part of that to, you know, provide additional hours for the project coordinator to manage the project if you need that. So there are sort of ways that we are able to support businesses with this project coordinator. And again, I'll talk a little bit more about it later on, but the project coordinator will be required to meet with the arts officer, myself, at various times throughout the project. And this could be over the phone, in person, or in small groups. So we have set up a number of sort of meeting points to just sort of check in and make sure everyone's happy and safe, and, you know, that the project is working and benefiting people in the actual program. So funding preferences. Preferences will be given to applications which obviously demonstrate respectful partnerships. That's really important to us. So, you know, this, for the most part, these will be new relationships, you know, relationships between artists and local community organisations. And we want to make sure that, that, you know, everyone is working in a safe environment and a respectful environment. And so we need to be able to see that in terms of in the application process to show that, you know, there is a respect for one another and for what each partner will be bringing to this program. We also need to see a demonstration of the clear potential for impact on and all the growth of the arts and business community in Moreland, so it needs to be a benefit. It also needs to demonstrate a clear and positive impact on the wider community as well. So while this is a relationship between an artist and a local business, we would love to see that this actually sort of reaches out beyond that business, those business walls, and actually has an impact and engages with our local community as well. We are very much looking for creative solutions. So, you know, we are talking about an artistic residency. So this is an opportunity to, as I said, think outside the square, look at what some of the business challenges our local businesses might be facing, but what are the creative solutions? What are some of the ways that we can sort of impart that artistic layer on top to actually ensure that it's not just a practical solution, but it's actually something that engages really deeply with the artist and all the parties involved, and again with the wider community. And in terms of Moreland sort of funding preferences, we obviously encourage and champion artists from from diverse cultural backgrounds, Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islander artists and their culture, disabled and deaf artists, and LGBTQI artists as well. So we want this to be a really diverse group of partnerships, and we would really appreciate that you share this amongst your networks so that we can get a really lovely, deep sort of engagement. And obviously, again, you know, in line with our sort of environmental policies, we are very interested to see how these projects might address environmental sustainability and how that factors into the programs as well. What can be funded? So obviously the Community Creator Program aims to spark creative solutions to challenges faced by local businesses and community organisations. Projects can use a range of art forms, and as I mentioned before, it includes but not limited to literature, visual arts, performing arts, music or filmmaking to address a business, community or organisational challenge. Projects could include community development workshops, exhibitions, installations, film and documentary projects, or sculptures, to name a few. Later on in the Q&A session, we can have a bit of a chat about some others. You know, feel free to ask questions about any ideas that you might have, and we can go into a little bit further detail there and talk about potential projects. The main thing here is to think that, think big. You know, don't just assume that it needs to be I don't know, a mural on a wall to beautify a wall. You know, there are so many different opportunities that this could actually generate some really interesting and new ways of addressing a challenge. Some of the ideas that we've heard up to date have been, you know, a curated book for historical society. You know, something that they've been wanting to do in terms of how they store and generate sort of content and archive the material they have. So, you know, that's one potential idea. You know, it might be a community group looking to engage with a particular group of their community network, and this might be, you know, a series of workshops or something where performing artists come in and actually work with the community to you know, to generate stories or something like that. So just, you know, be free in your thinking. In terms of what the selection panel will be looking for, the points here are supporting new working relationships between artists and business community organisations. We want to see that the project addresses a challenge or a need within the business or community organisation or the wider community. We want to be able to see that it provides an opportunity for the community renewal post-COVID-19 lockdown. As I said, we're now sort of starting to see the sort of restrictions easing, which is really exciting. But it's going to take a long time for us to really sort of get back to what we perceive as, you know, COVID normal. So we want to be able to see that there's some sort of ongoing benefit to this in some way. We would love to see the, you know, evidence to show support for the generation of new or existing income streams, to explore new ways of engaging audiences for new or existing work, to respond to the current COVID-19 situation and beyond. And obviously the selection panel are looking for projects that take place between April and June of 2021. So as I've already acknowledged, this is quite a fast, short turnaround. So for the right applicants, we will consider extending this timeline on a case-by-case scenario. So don't feel that if you can't have the project completed by June that it's immediately ineligible, but our timeframe would like it to be done by that time, but not at the detriment of the project. So what will not be funded? So projects held outside of Moreland will not be funded. This, as I said, is a program that is looking to develop new partnerships between artists and our local businesses. So artists that are already working with the local community in an artist in residence style scenario are ineligible for this particular program. Having said that, if they are currently working with an organisation, they are ineligible for this program. If you have a working relationship, like a past historical relationship of working with this organisation, then absolutely we'd love that. And in fact, we would totally appreciate that, the fact that there is an ongoing partnership happening as well. So that would be seen as a benefit. Obviously, you know, any project that lacks evidence of suitable permits and approvals will not be funded. We need to see that the thought has been put through and that, you know, processes are being met in an appropriate way. The program is not for competitions, awards, fundraising activities, fetes, reunions, amateur or hobby pursuits. We obviously won't be supporting any projects that breach state government and Commonwealth government public health measures and restrictions to slow the spread of COVID-19 in place at the time of the project. We're unable to support projects that reimbursements for projects that have already occurred, so no retrospective funding. We also won't fund outstanding loans or debts. We won't be able to fund projects that are already partially or wholly funded by council via other funding streams for the same activity in the same financial year. And in a similar vein, applicants that have an outstanding Northern City Council acquittal will be ineligible as well. This is a one-off program, so any initiatives that require ongoing funding from council to be sustained will not be funded. And we don't accept applicants who have lobbied or canvassed councillors or council officers for the application process. So all applications will be assessed through a assessment process, which I'll talk a little bit about later on. The last two is tertiary education qualifications are ineligible, and any applications where the recipients' organisations promote and or benefit directly from electronic gaming machines or any form of gambling are also ineligible. So, how to get involved? As I mentioned, there is a two-stage process. Artists are currently being asked to submit your EOIs now and up until midnight, Sunday 31st. And literally the next moment, the business applications will open first thing Monday, the 1st of February, and they are then open for 3 weeks. So in all instances, first thing to do is go onto our website, have a look at the web page and download the guidelines. So the guidelines, same set of guidelines for both artists and businesses, and it will give you a lot of the information. This PowerPoint presentation will also be made available on the website, hopefully by tomorrow. So you can also go through it and find any other details in here as well. And this information session, if you do want to re-listen to it or share it with others, will also be made available on the website and Arts Moreland YouTube channel. So how to get involved? Again, both artists and businesses, you can approach one another and start those conversations now. If you have existing partnership relationships with each other, go and talk to one another and see what projects you might be able to come up with that would suit this program. If on the other hand, you're a business that doesn't know any artists, or an artist that doesn't know of any local businesses that might want to be involved, we are doing a EOI process for the artists. So that's what's open at the moment, and the submissions, all eligible artists will then be included in a Community Creator Artist in Residence program database. It's a very simple Smarty Grants process. You could potentially finish it in 10 minutes, and this is for your expressions of interest. It gives us a little bit of information about who you are, what you do, what you're interested in, what kind of projects you'd like to be involved in, your art form, and a vague sort of range of availability. Once the EOIs close on Sunday the 31st, the next morning I'll actually be developing that database, and from that point on, businesses who don't have an artist that in mind can then get in touch, and I'll be able to provide businesses with a list of artists from that database. And this is where that matching process begins. So I will then send the businesses a list of a short list of artists with contact details removed, and that will provide the businesses with an art form, a bit of a biog, a name obviously, and an idea of what those artists might be interested in doing. And then once they've had a look at those artists, they can get back to me with their shortlist, and I will then do an e-introduction between the business and artist, so that you can start talking to one another and start thinking about these programs and projects. So that's it for the artist. So it's a simple EOI, currently open until Sunday the 31st, and then eligible artists will then be matched with appropriate businesses. So from the business side of things then, again, once you've read the guidelines, and if you don't have an artist in mind, that's when you get in touch with me. You are able to work with one artist or two co-artists if they happen to be working together for the duration of the project. So it is about one single project, not multiple groups of artists throughout the period. Again, both of these application processes are done through our Smarty Grant. So there's a Smarty Grants EOI for artists and a business submission for businesses. Yes, and applicants can make multiple submissions for separate projects, but only one application per business might be successful. So timeline, as I said, the expressions of interest for artists is currently open and closes midnight Sunday the 31st. The following day, the business and community organisations funding submissions open, and that's open for 3 weeks. Once that's closed, we have an assessment process, and that those recommendations are then made up to our director, and we expect artists and businesses to be notified by late March or early April. During that first week or two of early April will be the signing of agreements. We then have a facilitated project induction and planning workshop. So with the 5 projects, so the 5 artists and business partnerships, we will have a full day, and at this stage we're looking at Wednesday the 14th of April, but we'll confirm that a little bit later on. This day is about getting everyone together. Hopefully, fingers crossed, it'll be face-to-face. And what we'll do is actually sort of have a bit of a presentation about the projects that have been successful, and we'll actually start working through program plans, some timelines, and we will assist each of the partnerships in that planning process, so that when everyone goes off, everyone has a really clear idea of what their project involves, what the expectations are from both parties, and who to go and see if you need any assistance with anything. The project delivery is, as I said, mid-April to June, but we will accept, we will consider extensions to that timeline. And through that period, there will be regular check-ins and for both businesses and artists. There will be some meetings where we might have the artist and the business together. There'll be others that are just sort of purely artist and arts officer check-ins. These might happen by phone, face-to-face, and we'll work with each of the groups to determine the best times for that during that process. Artists will also be invited to our community of practice meetings, which is a Moreland artist networking opportunity for all of our current and past funding recipients. So it's not a prerequisite to attend, but it's a really useful thing to attend and to get to know other members of the community, of the artistic community. So you're very welcome to attend that. And then at the end, businesses will be required to submit an acquittal report, and that'll include a financial report and a brief written report, and that's also done through Smarty Grants. There'll also be some feedback that we will, and evaluation that we'll approach the artists and the businesses as well, so that we can really get an idea of how the project has worked for everyone, and what things might, should this program continue on in the future, what this program might actually be like in a second reincarnation, if that ever happens. So financially, what the program is actually offering our artists and businesses. So an artist fee will be paid of approximately $14,500 plus on costs, and that'll be paid directly to the artist via Auspicious Arts Project. And this hopefully will then alleviate the business from having to do any of that extra sort of wage, and payroll administration. So we'll manage that through Auspicious Arts for you. In terms of the rates of pay, it will be in accordance with any industry awards or guidelines outlined by the artist's respective industry. And so we're not setting a straight fee at this point, but we will work with each of you to work out what that might be. It will be award or above, so it's a properly paid opportunity. Depending, based on our research of the various awards for the various art forms, this can give anywhere between 200 and 400 hours depending on the art form. So it's quite broad, but as I said, each artist will be paid in accordance with the minimum or above award for their particular art form. Artists will also be provided a materials budget of $4,000 or up to, and this will be provided and managed through Auspicious Arts as well. And this you'll need to then, this will be done through Auspicious, so they will receive your receipts and they'll reimburse you through that as well. So that's the artists. Businesses will be given a $4,000 contribution, and this is for how the business wants to spend. So it's up to the business to decide how you can best use this $4,000 for the project. So some of you may want to increase hours for your project coordinator, for example. So this might assist with their wages. It might be to, set up a desk or, a computer for your artist. It could be additional expenses that are incurred because of the program. So again, during the Smarty Grants application process, we ask for a rundown of how you think that $4,000 will be spent. But as long as it's for the program, it really is up to you how you think it might best serve your business or organisation. In addition to these pools of money, we also have a separate access and inclusion budget. And this has been established to support any additional needs that might be needed. Now, if as an artist or as a business you have some things that are required, just get in contact with me and we'll work at that on a case-by-case scenario. So that might be, it could be an Auslan interpreter, it could be making a space more accessible for a wheelchair user. It could be a language translator, any number of things. So just get in contact with me and we can talk through that and work out how we can best serve that. So the assessment process. We're going, we're doing okay. That's all right. So again, with two different application processes, there are two assessment processes. The artist EOI, as I said, is quite a simple one. If you're an eligible artist according to the guidelines, what's set out in the guidelines, you'll be added to that community creator database. And then a list of appropriate artists will be sent to businesses that request to be matched. It's then up to the business to come back to us and decide which of the artists they would like to work with and who they see fits their organisation. And we then take it from there and start building on that relationship. The business program application will go through what we would sort of a more regular assessment process, which is sort of more in line with our other funding application, funding program, sorry. And this is where I go through each application and confirm that it's eligible. We then have an assessment panel meeting where at least 4 officers from across council and 1 representative of the Moreland Arts Advisory Committee will read and go through the assessment, through the business applications, and we then meet and come up with a shortlist. And then that shortlist is then reported on as, is then put together and recommended to our director. The director then approves that final list of participants, and at that point we then can notify artists and businesses of their success. Just on that, the artists, actually, so I'll just go back. Do I have any notes on the other one? Oh, I don't see it now. Okay. we will be notifying all artists and all businesses, so regardless of whether you're successful or not. So there will be a date, and I can't remember that off the top of my head right at this moment, but you will be notified by a particular date, and I will try and find that date a little bit later on. So the assessment criteria for the businesses, we will look at objectives, whether the project meets one or more of the 9 listed objectives. We'll look at the artistic merit of the project, the potential impact, the capacity to deliver of the business and community organisation, A, that they can actually accommodate an artist within the workplace, and B, that you have the capacity with the roles and responsibilities of a project team who can successfully manage the project as well. We also look at access and inclusion, obviously, whether the project is culturally safe and accessible. We look at the budget and whether the budget is realistic and appropriate to the size and type of project submitted. We're not asking for a very complex budget. It really is just expenditure. So again, that shouldn't take too much time in that application process. And then there's also a number of support documents that we're looking for. So letters of support from other local organisations, the artist. We do ask for some documents that the artist needs to also prepare for the business application, and I'll go through a little bit more detail a little bit later on. So the EOI form for artists now. This is just a quick overview of what you'll find in your in the Smarty Grants form. So it's contact details. Again, of those contact details, only the name is given to the business. Everything else will come later down the track, you know, when you're matched. So in terms of privacy, it's just your name that's being shared. Creative skills, so we're looking at sort of what art form, whether you're emerging, mid-career or established, and, you know, self-identified there. A brief description of your creative skills, your experience, and also other relevant interests. You know, we want to know, I mean, if perhaps you've always wanted to do a project that is looking at recycling, for example, or something, and perhaps it is an organisation in our local community that worked with recycling or environmental issues or something like that. And so maybe that is the type of match that we can then look at creating. It might be that you're interested in working with young people, or, you know, a particular community group or something like that. We also ask for a brief description of why you'd like to be considered for this program, and a brief description of your ideal project outcome and what you would hope to get out of this partnership. So that's sort of the chunky, meaty bit that we're interested in. Then obviously we just need to know your availability. And again, this is just a vague idea, you know, whether you're available evenings, weekends, during school holidays. You know, you're only available from from April to mid-May, for example. You know, just give us an idea of what other commitments you might have. Perhaps you've got, you know, a part-time job that you need to work around, those sorts of things. So this is where you need to just sort of let us know what kind of availability we're working with. And obviously those sorts of things can be worked out in more detail later on. We also need to know, obviously, whether there are any accessibility or inclusion barriers that we need to address prior to the commencement of the project. And as I said, we've set aside a separate budget for this. So just let us know how we can be of assistance and make sure that there's nothing stopping you from participating in this program. We also then just ask to self-identify as one of our focus communities. And this is to ensure that we do have a diverse group of artists and businesses involved in the program. And then again, obviously support materials. So we ask for an artist CV or a statement and examples of previous work. So look, I mean, a lot of these things are, you know, a lot of them are tick boxes. They're things that you would already have, like an artist CV, examples of work, website. So it really shouldn't take too long to submit an EOI. And we've done that intentionally so as to not, you know, create an abundance of workload sort of thing for our artists. For the businesses, Unfortunately, sorry businesses, there's a little bit more work here, but again, we really try to make this as simple and easy as possible for our businesses to apply for. And by the time you're applying, you will have your artist matched. And so there are some things in this application where we ask the artist to actually provide for this application. So you'll need to work together on this final application. So the things that we look for in the business application form is obviously project details like a title of the project, dates that you're looking at, location of where it's going to happen, contact details. So we look for 3 different contact people. So there's the lead business contact. So this is the person that will sign the contract, that has submitted the application, potentially your CEO or a general manager, that sort of role. We also have the company's nominated project coordinator. So this is the person that could be from anywhere within your organisation that you are nominating as being that central contact point, and obviously the artist details. Now, obviously, we may or may not have these artist details already because they may or may not have already submitted an EOI process. Regardless of whether the artist has been matched through the EOI process or not, we do require you to add those artist details here. And so again, this is where you need to work with your artist to get these details from them, so that when the application goes to the assessment panel, all of these details are in one place, and we can make our best decisions that way. We also just ask for a brief description of what the organisation does. This could be your mission statement, like just a simple, paragraph or so. We want a description of your proposed project. We need a budget. Obviously, as I said, it's not a full budget. It's really just a list of the expenditure for both the artist materials, so we have a sense of what sort of artist materials will be required, and then also the business's budget for the $4,000 administration contribution. So just to give us an idea of how you imagine that money will be spent. And then finally, support materials. So there's a number of things that will be across the board for every application. Those include a copy of the letter of agreement signed by the artist and business. Now, this might not be finalised. We recognise that, but at least if you can upload a draft so that we have an idea of where it is in the process, and that would be great. The other thing we obviously need also support material is a list of the project team. So the roles and responsibilities of who's actually involved in the project. Obviously, project coordinator and artists will be on that list, but there might be other support staff as well that might be involved in some way or another. You might have a marketing manager or something, for example, that will look after the marketing components of the program that we'll need to be in touch with, obviously. So put together anyone else in your project team in that list as well. From the artist, we would like an artist statement outlining how the project will benefit the artist's professional practice. And we also need an artist biography, again, provided by the artist. We also need a project plan, including a timeline. Now, this is actually one of those things that doesn't need to be finalised at this point, because it's this project plan that we will then further develop in our planning and induction workshop. So it's an idea. It's the starting point. Put as much detail as you can in there, but if it's not absolutely, finalised down to the last minute, that's okay. Just give us what you've got, and with as much information as you have. We also need letters of support, current public liability certificates, and any other additional support material that might be particular to the program, to the project itself, and this will depend on the nature of your project. So this could be organisations' lease agreements, a letter of permission from landlords to undertake the work, relevant permits, those sorts of things. So we're almost at the Q&A session, and so we're doing okay for time, I think. Yeah, we are actually doing okay for time. So this is a bit of a summary of what I've sort of given you over the last 45 minutes or so. So a step-by-step guide, and this can also be found on the website if you want to sort of run through it. So I'm hoping that this sort of makes this kind of complex program a lot more streamlined and very easy to understand. So step 1, artists are invited to submit a simple expression of interest form through Moreland City Council Smarty Grants. Step 2, as of the 1st of February, businesses will then be invited to submit a funding application form through Moreland City Council Smarty Grants. So as I mentioned before, if you already, as a business, if you already have an artist in mind that you know of or have been keen to work with, by all means, go and approach them now and start the conversation. You know, it's the more time you have actually talking to one another before the application process, the better. So go out there and start having those conversations now. If you don't have an artist in mind, then as of the 1st of February, I'll have a list of artists who have expressed interest in being involved, and I'll be able to help you there with matching artists that might be appropriate for the project or the challenge that you're facing in your business. So that's a bit. So I'll then provide you with 3 shortlisted artists, and sorry, I've gone too far. And once you then, I'll give the businesses a list of artists, and the business then comes back to me with 3 shortlisted artists, and I will then set up an e-introduction between the artists and businesses, and then you can start having a chat to each other, meet potentially face-to-face or over the phone, and just actually talk through your ideas, and from that point then the business can select which artist they would like to continue a project with. From that point on the 21st, so by the 21st, apologies for my phone just there, by the 21st of February is when our business submissions close, and so by that date you will need to have submitted your artist in residence funding application, and at this point you will have already had your artist on board. The Moreland City Council selection panel will then select 5 projects through our assessment during our assessment meeting, and this is based on the assessment criteria that I spoke about earlier. Then, once that's approved by the director, successful community creator, artist in residence program applicants are notified of their outcome via email, and this email will actually be sent to the lead business contact and the artist via email. So this is absolutely from the very beginning a partnership program. So we will be having our communication will be between both. I should actually also mention that the project coordinator, sorry, I didn't put that in, but the project coordinator will also be included in that email as well. The artist's primary business contact and the nominated project coordinator will then be invited to attend the compulsory welcome and planning session that I spoke about before. That's looking at being the 14th at this stage. And as I mentioned, this will be an opportunity to really sort of delve into what your program is, what it looks like, and start planning out sort of the stages of the program and how it's best going to sort of the partnership. Unsuccessful community creator, artists and resident program applicants, both the artists through their EOIs and businesses will then also be notified of their outcome via email. So successful projects commence in April 2021. And as I mentioned, we'll ideally finish by the 30th of June, but we will consider extensions depending on the case-by-case scenario. Again, as I mentioned, artists and businesses are required to attend regular progress meetings, and these will be set a little later down the track, but you'll find more details on our website and in our guidelines in terms of what sort of times these are. But these check-ins are really about just making sure that everyone's doing okay, that it is about, that the project's sort of tracking well, that people are feeling safe in their environments, that their expectations are being met, and just sort of, solve any issues that may have arisen. At the end of the program, then the businesses will be required to submit an acquittal report, and this includes a financial report, as I mentioned, and a brief written report, and this is done through Smarty Grants. Then right at the end, artists and businesses will be invited to attend a feedback and evaluation session. And this might be in a number of different ways. I'm still working this one out. There will be a survey, and there may very well be a face-to-face evaluation session as well, where we actually come together and have a chat about the program. This is also a great opportunity just to kind of feedback and, present what your projects were, and actually, meet the artists, other artists and other businesses again, and just, build that sort of community as well. So I'm sure you've all heard my voice enough now, but we're almost at the end. So terms and conditions. There are a number of things, obviously, that artists and businesses will need to do. Firstly, you will enter into an agreement with the business community organisation outlining the roles and responsibility of each party. You agree to use the funding for the project outlined in the application only and in line with the budget submitted in the application. Also, assuming, including variations. You will acknowledge Arts Moreland and Moreland City Council by using logos on all promotional material relating to the activity and with the accompanying text. You will ensure that any relevant legal permissions with regards to copyright and intellectual property rights is followed through with. You'll attend at least one progress meeting, which is face-to-face or online, as I mentioned, with the arts officer, project coordinator and other members of the arts and culture team as required to discuss your progress. Attend at least one informal check-in meeting, either face-to-face, online or on the phone, with the arts officer and other members of the arts and culture team as required to discuss any challenges you might be facing. Obtain any relevant permits, as I said, and again, as I mentioned, artists are also invited to attend our community practice group meetings. We have 4 scheduled throughout the year. It's held with other Arts Moreland grant and residency recipients, and it's a great opportunity to reflect on the activity that you've undertaken and share experiences. We also often have sort of professional development, like speakers come in and talk about various topics that are of relevance to the group. And again, as I mentioned, attendance is not compulsory for this project, but we strongly recommend you do, because it's a great opportunity to sort of meet other artists as well. So for businesses, terms and conditions, again, enter into a funding agreement with council, which sets out the conditions and reporting requirements. That you enter into an agreement with the artist outlining the roles and responsibilities of each party, so that everyone's sort of on the same page and knows what is expected of everyone. You also agree to use the funding for the project outlined in the application only and in line with the budget submitted in the application and any variations. You agree and commit to being covered by an appropriate public liability insurance policy. You'll also acknowledge Arts Moreland and Moreland City Council by using any logos on promotional material relating to the activity and accompanying text. You'll make sure to obtain any relevant legal permissions with regards to copyright and intellectual property rights. You also agree to submit an acquittal report, including a financial report and a brief written report, again via Smarty Grants. It's your role to ensure that the project coordinator attends regular progress meetings with the arts officer, artists and other members of the arts and culture team. And that means ensuring that they are able to attend these meetings during work time and support them through that, and obtain any relevant permits as required. All of these terms and details are in the guidelines as well, so most of this information can be found in the guidelines. In terms of copyright and intellectual property, the artist will retain all intellectual property rights, and all artwork needs to be credited to the artist for the life of the work. In terms of copyright, that remains with the business and community organisation. Both parties, artists and businesses, agree to grant Moreland Council a fee-free, non-exclusive licence to publish reproductions of the work for any non-commercial purposes for the life of the work. And this includes council brochures, promotional posters, social media, other sort of ways in which council likes to share our information and, talk about our local businesses and the wonderful things our businesses and artists are doing in the community. Where a project activity will use a third-party copyright material or another entity's intellectual property, it is the applicant's responsibility to seek and obtain all necessary permissions. And this is very important. So in terms of what we can do marketing-wise, any events that come out of this program, you can put on our What's On calendar, so you can just go and submit that yourselves. The link is there. We also have an Arts Moreland e-newsletter that goes out once a month. So get in touch with the arts officer and, you know, keep us, I mean, we'll be keeping each other up to date anyway, but, you know, there'll be opportunities where we can actually share news about your program through the Arts Moreland e-news and also our social media as well. Okay, that's it actually for the program. I'm just going to take a few quick moments just to talk about a couple of other Moreland opportunities for our artists while I have you here. So the 2021 renewal program has just had its date extended to midnight Sunday, the 31st of January. So visual artists that that might be interested in that program, please have a look at the website renewal on our website. Just repeating myself there, sorry. And you've been given an extra week to make a submission there. Brunswick Music Festival has just announced a production mentorship program, I think just announced today. So check out their socials for an announcement that they posted. And this is 2 new mentors that will be working with the Brunswick Music Festival team this year. Also for both artists and businesses, other opportunities to look at funding through Moreland City Council is the Community Grants team and the Business Moreland team. So obviously there are multiple ways that Moreland is able to help our community through funding and grants and residencies and support programs. Arts and culture is just one of them. So, you know, with projects, whether it, well, not for this particular one, because if you are successful with this, then it does make you ineligible for others. But with any projects that you have, make sure that you also look at Community Grants and Business Moreland to see how council might be able to assist you in other ways. All right, I'm doing, oh my goodness, I can't believe I've actually done really well on time. So next is questions. So give me a moment and I will just, give me a moment. You can all, I'm going to turn this off now so I can see your lovely faces if you wish. Okay, as I did mention, we are recording this, so if you don't want to be recorded and you would prefer to leave your video and microphone off, then feel free to do so. But if you'd like to have your face, I would love to see your faces. It's nice to not just look at a screen and so I can actually see you. Then feel free to turn your cameras and microphones on rather. So questions. Throw them at me.
Sounds like a great program, Angela. I only just found out about it today, and then I was like, amazing. So I've come along, and I'm glad to hear a little bit more about it. I've got a technical question. Will it says business not for profit. Will you fund organisations that already are funded by Moreland Council in other forms?
No, unfortunately, that's one of the things that we can't, and that's a sort of fairly general guideline rule for us. Well, not for this project. So it depends. I mean, it might be easier to talk about these specifics offline.
Sure.
But it is for project specific. So if you're funded by a different department to do a completely different project, then that's okay. Mm-hmm. But you can't be funded for the same project or components of the same project by multiple Moreland pools of money. Okay, so basically it's no double dipping for a single project. But
Okay.
yeah, that's not to say that you can't have a different program happening that's supported by, you know, youth services or something like that. That's perfectly okay.
Okay, that sounds good. I do have a lot of you know, because of the arts community in Moreland, there's a lot of collectives that exist, and I know you mentioned that it's for one or two collaborative projects. Maybe that's something that we can talk about further, but I do know that there's collectives that would be really interested in this project. So that's something to consider, and, you know, it'd be great to talk about that further, because I think you'd get more bang for your buck, really. And if the collective's willing to work, I understand the structure might not support that, but I can think of, you know, a few sort of collectives that have formed over COVID, you know, to support each other and work together to collaborate on lots of different art projects. So maybe that's sort of what I was thinking through this process, that how that would work.
Yeah, and look, that was actually one of the things that we did have quite a number of conversations around, like what it actually was, and in our community consultation conversations as well. And I guess ultimately, you know, if you have to sort of pinpoint it down to one thing, it is about an employment opportunity for an artist, but it needs to be, I mean, in terms of that part of the partnership, obviously, you know, the businesses, we have other sort of objectives to help the businesses. And it did come down to the point that, you know, it's not an infinite amount of money. And we wanted to make sure that who we were supporting were being supported properly with a you know, proper wage, not some sort of half, you know, $20 an hour kind of thing. And so because of that, we had to kind of go, okay, well, you know, in order to actually pay our artists properly, we need to sort of limit it to one person, maximum two, because otherwise then you're actually diluting that wage and it becomes a lot of people working for next to nothing, and that's not acceptable.
Okay.
Which is actually which is also why we say that the project coordinator needs to be a paid role from the business point of view, because we also don't want to expect that a volunteer will volunteer their hours for the project coordinator role from the business side. So we believe they should also be paid, and that's why we're happy for the businesses to actually contribute or to use some of that $4,000 admin contribution towards extra hours. So, you know, it might be that they allocate, I don't know, maybe just off the top of my head, you know, 5 hours a week, or, you know, whatever, or per fortnight, or whatever the project needs, to just be that project coordinator. So that makes them distinct. So they're also being valued and paid appropriately.
Angela, oh, sorry.
There you go.
You mentioned a couple of times the Arts Past Grants meetups. What are they, and how do you get involved? Because that sounds great.
Yeah, the community practice meetings. Yeah, so we've been running them for a couple of years. They initially started as part of the acquittal process for our funding artists, or artists who've received funding. And so, for example, the arts activation recipients would have to attend 1 out of 4 per year, and that actually became part of the reporting process. So in our efforts to reduce the amount of work required for the acquittal process, we made sure that there was, you know, a bit of a funding sort of report, like a budget report, like a small written component, but that the primary sort of acquittal process was done during this meeting, where we could actually chat face to face. And this was done in a group setting where they could choose to attend one of any of the 4 annual meetings. Arts Investment were required to attend 3 out of the 4. So what we were finding was that these groups were actually getting a lot out of actually meeting and just having an opportunity to talk to one another and listen and hear from other artists. So in 2020, we actually changed it up a little bit and then invited all of our past recipients for the last, I think it was 3 or 4 years, going back to our, oh gosh, I can't remember what the funding program was called. It was before my time, but the Creating Spaces, I think it was. And so it's still an acquittal component for current artists. So our Flourish Grant recipients will need to attend 3 out of the 4, but any previous ones that have already been acquitted, it's an open invitation to attend. And so that's how we're sort of treating our community creator artists, that they are invited to attend if they wish, but it's not a compulsory part of their acquittal. But we just hope that it's just an opportunity for us to be able to help build on the networks and things. I mean, in 2020, obviously with COVID, we were unable to meet face-to-face, which is what we would normally do. And so we met over Teams. And, you know, it was an opportunity for artists to share some of the challenges they were facing, you know, some of the wins they'd had. And we talked about that and shared our experiences and stuff. So it became a really useful kind of opportunity just to be outside of ourselves and stuff as well. And so, yes, our artists will be invited along to attend that.
So can you put your hand up to attend that if you haven't had a grant?
I can't see why not. I'll have a chat to my team later and we'll see that. I think it's more, I think at this stage it was more just about what we were able to manage. I'm 2 days a week as arts officer, and it's I don't have the resources to do sort of a big sort of networking thing.
Yeah.
So we've sort of tried to keep it quite small. But I'll have a chat to our team leader.
Yeah, because that'd be fantastic to network locally.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah. Look, I agree. And I know another organisation I used to work with in the West. It was actually something that I did put together. We had a Facebook sort of members group, and it worked really well. But it's actually because of my experience there that I realised just how but how much time it takes to actually do it well. And so I guess that's why at this point we've kind of just said our funding recipients. But I'll have a chat, and perhaps you could email me and and I'll follow it up with you.
Fantastic.
Outside of this meeting. Yep.
Thank you.
I have a question about, sorry.
I think Coralie had her hand up for a while there. So Coralie next.
Yep. Hi, can you hear me?
Not very well.
Oh, hang on, let me try. Is that better?
Good enough, yes.
Okay. So I'm just a little bit confused still about the application process. Firstly, like, is Moreland going to be reaching out to businesses to like gain interest in this process, or are the artists supposed to go out and talk to businesses? Like, what kind of advertising is Moreland going to do to generate the interest from business is my first question. And secondly,
let me answer that one first.
Yeah, okay.
And then we'll get on to the next one. So both is the answer. You are welcome to go and talk to businesses directly. And I mean, if you already have an existing partnership or an existing relationship with an organisation, then absolutely run with that, because, as you would all know, these sorts of residencies and these sorts of projects are, you need a lot of time to actually build the depth of engagement within these programs. We're really aware that it's a very short time frame, and that is because it was brought up for this financial year. So back in early 2019, it was money approved for this financial year. But in order for us to feel comfortable with the program that we're presenting, there was a lot of research and a lot of negotiation, like a lot of community consultation and conversations that had to be had in order to develop this kind of complex program. So it has meant that the activity side of things is shorter, which is why we're happy to actually extend the end date if required, because we acknowledge that it is a short time frame. So if you already have a relationship with a business, then absolutely go and have that conversation and start, because that's already, you've already built that sort of beginning of a relationship. In terms of those businesses that don't have an artist in mind, or an artist that doesn't have a business in mind, we are pumping this out through our Arts Moreland networks. It's also being pumped out through our libraries. It's also being pumped out through our business economic development team. So it's being spread out throughout various Moreland Council departments. As a Moreland resident myself, I know I'm sort of, posting in every local Moreland Facebook group that is relevant, but it is just a matter of getting it out there. So I'd really love for people to actually take the opportunity to share it with anyone you think might be appropriate or interested in this. We are doing Triple R adverts and blah blah blah. So we're trying to get it out as spread out across the community as possible.
Okay,
Second
great. Yeah, my second question was regarding the application process.
Mhm.
So when you've paired a business up with an artist, who is at that point, is it one application or is it still two applications? And do you see the business or the artist being responsible for writing that application and responding to the selection criteria?
It's the business and artist developing the project. It's the business submitting the application, but there are components that the artist will need to provide for the business. So it will be things like the artist's biography and artist statement. So there are components that the artist will provide, but the application itself is submitted by the business, and it's the business that is then required to do the acquittal at the end as well. We would hope that the partnership is one that, it's an equal partnership. So then when you're talking about the creative output and the challenges that are being addressed and what that project might look like, we would expect that the artist and the business are working together. But the actual application is submitted by the business.
Yeah, because I was just more worried, like in terms of businesses that weren't familiar with submitting grants and things like that. Like as artists, we're used to doing grants, but if a business is like doesn't know anything about writing grants or like addressing selection criteria or things like that, what advice would you have in that regard?
To get in touch with me. If you know of a business that needs assistance, just to get in touch with me, and I'm more than happy to talk them through what's required. As I said, this presentation has been recorded and it will be made available on our webpage, for the Community Creator webpage. So they're able to have a listen in on that. But yeah, I mean, basically, just if they have a question, just feel free to get in touch with me. And this is on the webpage, I think, somewhere. But because I'm working remotely, as most of the arts and culture team are, I think all the arts and culture team are, my remote phone is not great. So I have allocated a certain amount of time each day where the remote phone is working. It's a weird redirection through to my mobile and all sorts of complex tech stuff. So there is a dedicated time where I have that phone on. And they can call me then, but the easiest way is just to get in touch with me via email.
Okay, great, thank you.
I think next was JK and then Rachel again.
My question was just about, did you have any examples of the kind of outcomes that you're hoping might come from this project?
Yeah, look, we've had this question a lot. We don't have anything particular in mind. It really needs to be about what challenges the business might have and how that can be addressed creatively. I know that's not a particularly helpful thing, but
It's a bit broad.
I know, and that's because we don't actually want to narrow the field down too much. We don't want to say this sort of arts project is okay and this one's not. It might be. As I said, like there's one inquiry that we had where an organisation has got a plethora of archival historic material that is just sort of being eaten away in a back room somewhere. And I think they're actually coming up to sort of a milestone year or something. But they're interested in actually, creating some kind of book or, you know, exhibition or something. And so that sort of project could be, you know, you work with a curator or a writer, an illustrator, like it could be a project that ends up as a book or an exhibition, you know. So that would be a great outcome, because it's actually about looking at the ways that archival historical material can be salvaged and saved and actually shared with the community. It could also be, as I said, it could be artists coming in and doing workshops with community groups. It could be...
That's quite interesting in a way, in that as an artist, it is quite exciting to have the idea that a business could have these quite unusual activities that they want to do that is not necessarily something I would have thought of contributing to that business, but would have skills that could be useful.
Exactly. And that's the thing why, you know, that's why we're sort of in the EOIs for the artists, we're looking at what are your other interests. So I'm not talking about things of what you would put on your art CV that, you know, I have done voiceover work and this and this and this. I'm actually interested to see what are your outside of your arts practice interests and how they might connect with businesses and community groups, so that when someone does get in touch with me, or when a business gets in touch with me, they can, you know, I can sort of go, okay, you know what, this person is really keen to work with your kind of group. So it's about looking at what that challenge is and then finding ways of creating something new and interesting, I guess. And by assisting the business, I mean, obviously this is assisting the artist. I think that sort of goes without saying in terms of actually an employment opportunities, you know, number
Absolutely.
one big thing. But from a business point of view, it's actually about looking at something that you may not have the capacity as a business to fund, or even necessarily have the mindset to kind of solve. And so it's that opportunity to sort of go, okay, well, this is our problem, and this is a way to engage an artist, to find something that is going to engage with the wider community as well. I mean, it'll be an interesting project. Like it's not going to be just for nuts and bolts kind of, this is a practical solution. You know, we're hoping there's some really great community engaged projects that will serve the business long term. So while the business may not be getting, you know, $20,000, $30,000 grant, we would hope that they are actually receiving something that is of great benefit to them, you know, for the future.
Yeah.
As well.
Thanks. That's a great explanation.
I think, Rachel, you're next.
Yeah. Thanks, Angela. We've had quite a few ideas or things that have evolved through COVID in exactly the space that you're talking about, community connection, delivering on need for our business. And I was just wondering, you mentioned new ideas. So can we develop an idea that has existed further for this project? Or do you think that when you're reviewing the applications, it doesn't actually help that it has already seeded in the community and it's working? Does that make sense? Like, I just want to know if it has to be a completely new idea, or we've had, you know, quite a lot of projects that just don't have funding really, and they're ideas, they're kind of, they're seeded at the moment. So we just want to know if that will look on favourably, or it really just needs to be a completely separate thing that's happening.
I don't think the idea has to be new. It's more about that it's a new relationship, perhaps. So maybe think about it that way. So this is about new artist-business relationships, because that obviously has so many more benefits just beyond this project, and new ways of approaching the problem, perhaps. So it might, you know, like the challenges that we're asking businesses to address, obviously they're not a challenge that's just going to come up, you know, during this 2-week process. They're challenges that the businesses will have experienced over, you know, an extended period of time. So if you've already got those ideas, then that just means that, you know, you don't need to spend as much time thinking about what it is. But it is absolutely important that it is a new partnership with an artist. If the business and the artist already has an existing relationship for the project, then that's ineligible. But you can have worked with the artist before on a different project, that's fine. It's just that it's got to be about a new opportunity for an artist, not someone that's already perhaps being paid for an existing project. Did that answer your question? Yep, right, okay. I don't see any other hands up, but are there any other questions? No?
Katrine. Katrine.
Hello. Yeah, thank you.
Oh, great. Yep.
Hello. I forgot my question now. Yeah. It may have been answered already, but then I'm not quite clear on it. So let's say that I get in contact with a business or an organization, and you know we come to an agreement that we want to work together, and then we want to apply. So do I, as an artist, apply separately still, or is it just then only the business application where my information is added to?
Good question, and it took a while for me to work out what the answer to this was. If you don't need to have submitted an EOI to work with that business, but given that the EOI process is so easy, really, like we have made it as easy as possible, it might be worth your while to pop yourself into that database so that if any other opportunities come up, then you're on the database that we can then share with other businesses. If, however, you're absolutely certain that it's just this business you want to work on, and you're absolutely certain that this is an opportunity that will do very well in the process, then that's your choice to not do an EOI and just do be part of the business application. I would suggest that you do an EOI process as well, because it really, like, I've done everything possible to make it as simple as possible, but to ensure that we have enough information to kind of, work with it as well.
Yeah.
I mean, I've done a quick sort of test run through, and it was literally like a 10-15 minute process.
Great. Good. Thank you. Just another quick question. Yep. So with the selection process, with the EOI, so any eligible artists will be on the database, and then businesses can pick parties they want to work with. So really the end the end decision will be with the council and the businesses. But if you don't get picked by a business in the first place, then actually, as an artist, you don't really have a chance.
Right.
Yeah, that's how it. Yeah, so it's very
business. Yeah, it will be the business that makes the final decision as to who they want to work with and who they feel is the best fit for their particular project. But they will be given an opportunity to meet with three. I mean, when I say meet, that could be over the phone or whatever, depending on restrictions. But they'll have the opportunity to meet with, or to be introduced to three artists.
Yeah.
But and I suppose this is the thing. This is just about acknowledging the timelines as well, and that realistically, they're not going to have much more time to meet. They're not going to have the time to meet with 20 different artists to make that decision. From our point of view, we are here to support the partnership, but we're not here to direct it. So it's not our decision as to who those partnerships are, and which is also why it's really important that everyone understands that if you have a business/artist that you are interested in working with, you don't need to have that approved by us. Just go ahead and put in an application. We're not here to approve the partnerships. We're here to approve and recommend to the director the actual overall projects.
Yes. Okay. Great. And one last quick one. The amount, I think it was $14,000 that goes towards the artist. That's supposed to pay ourselves, and then to use the money to fund the project. Yeah.
Yes. So there's approximately it's $14,500 wages plus on cost, so super and work cover, and that'll be paid through Auspicious Arts. And then there's $4,000 or up to $4,000 for materials. Yeah. So now, if you don't need $4,000
on top of that,
materials, then that's fine, and that money may be reallocated elsewhere. But yes, you have $14,500 of wages plus on costs, and then up to $4,000 for materials, and then the business has $4,000 outright for their administration costs.
Yeah. And there's no, maybe a funny question, is there, are you allowed to outsource bits of the process? Let's say, that there's a very specific skill required that I may not have, but, little parts, and then have to pay that person.
I'd have to check with, with Auspicious how they'd manage that. I mean, it's the pay process is Auspicious would be paying you, whether that be a weekly PAYG or whether it be through invoice. So that money goes to you. If you choose to then employ and outsource someone else, then you need to deal with that yourself.
Yeah.
But the actual payment will go to you through the regular sort of Auspicious Arts projects processes.
Okay, great. So we're allowed to eventually to possibly do that if we need a little bit more specific
but it
skill or
does come out
something.
of your wages though,
Okay, thank you.
No worries. I think, and I've sort of lost a bit of track as to who's still up for next, but Belinda, and then I'll do Tamara. And Coralie, your hand is still raised, but I think I may have already answered yours. So if you want to pop your hand down, unless you have another question. But Belinda and then Tamara. Oh, and Fleur, sorry. Oh, you didn't come up with mine. Sorry, Fleur's first, then Belinda, then Tamara. Sorry, Fleur. And your mic is still on.
That's okay. Just a really quick one. I just wanted to check with eligibility. If you have received a Flourish Arts grant, does that make you ineligible?
Well, it depends. You wouldn't be able to, well, and it's unlikely that it'd be the same project. So you can't receive other funding, including Flourish funding, for the same project.
Yep.
Or if you have an outstanding acquittal.
Yep.
So if your Flourish project finished before the due date of the business application, which is the 21st of February, which I can't remember yours, but I'm guessing that that's not the case.
Not till November.
Yeah, okay. But yes, if you had finished your Flourish project and it was acquitted and it was not for the same project, then yes, you could apply.
Okay. So, but I can apply for a completely different.
You could apply for another one, but you have an outstanding acquittal. So that's the sticking point for this one.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, unfortunately. Sorry.
That's okay. Good to know, so I don't have to go through the process.
Yeah, but like share it with your friends. I've noticed you have sort of liked and shared the post, so thank you.
Thank you.
Next was Belinda.
Hi.
Hi.
I have to say I'm still a little bit confused. Like my option would be to put in an expression of interest without an actual project in mind.
Yes, as an artist, yes.
Yeah, so I don't need to like specify what kind of potential projects I could engage in. Is that what I'm?
Yes, is the short answer. But there is a part there where it asks you, what would be your ideal kind of project. So we do ask for that sort of information, but we're not asking you to have a set project because the project is dependent on the partnership itself.
Yeah.
If you have a project in mind and you have a business that it would suit, then go and approach that business and talk to them about it.
Yeah, because I was just, as you were giving examples, I thought it could be so open.
Yeah.
And if somebody else came to me with an idea, then that would be something new.
Yeah.
But how do you express on your expression of interest that you'd be open to a whole lot of different options?
Yeah.
Outside of your ideal.
Yeah. Well, I mean, just let us know. Like there's, big word count. You don't have to fill everything, be succinct, but if you have particular things in mind, look, the more information you give us, the more I can better match you. I mean, and look, there will be times where I will give an artist's name and bio go over, even when I think perhaps it's not going to be a perfect fit because maybe there's not enough information to suggest that it wouldn't be. So I'll sort of err on the side of caution, I guess, to provide the businesses with a few more options rather than make assumptions that an artist wouldn't do something, because I don't want to be the person that's actually blocking that opportunity. So the business will, potentially get a few more that may or may not match exactly, but that's then their decision to make. Because obviously, short of being a 70 hours a week kind of role, I'm not going to know every single project, every single business and every single artist and what they might come up with. So
Sure.
it's going to be a fairly open kind of channel to the business and stuff as well. But yeah, I mean, ultimately, if you have an idea and a business that might be interested in that, just go and talk to them. In your EOI process, give us whatever information you can about what sort of things you are interested in doing, and any interests and what you would hope the project might be. And then from that's what I can sort of gather and read and, make those sort of decisions and things.
Oh, great. Thanks.
No worries. Tamara, now is your hand still up or did you have another question?
Put the noise on. Really simple one, your email.
Oh, yes. It's on, if you go to the Community Creator website, you'll find I can never remember what it is.
No, your website's not on there. It's just got your phone number.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Well, that's all I can see is your phone number.
There's arts grants at
artsgrants@.
moreland.vic.gov.au.
Oh, that one. Okay, so it's not your personal email. Okay, cool.
No. I mean, both go into my inbox. It's just about continuity of grants. Go through one.
Okay, so thank you. That's it.
So I get both. Yep. Now, Coralie, you've got your hand still up? Was that because it's the old one or a new one? New question.
I've got another question. Well, two short ones. Firstly, when we're putting in the expression of interest, do we have to look at the do we have to address the selection criteria, or is that more something that we need to look at in the second phase of where the business does their application?
No, that's the business. If you're referring to the objectives, then that's objectives of the project, but that would come in under the business application. The artist really is, it's an expression of interest to say, hey, I'm interested in this project. I'd love to be considered for.
But and the second question I had is, does part of your ideas have to be in-person things? Like, for example, with literature, businesses usually have a website. Stuff can be put online. Is there like, do you want us to move away from doing stuff online because this is more like an in-person kind of thing that you want to do for the business, or does it not matter?
It doesn't matter. It's project specific. It's whatever works for the project, the artist and the business.
Okay.
We would like to, it would be nice to have something in person, given we've all, been so isolated for the last year. So it would be nice to celebrate the opportunity to get out there into the community, but it's not a prerequisite. And, even if you do have something that is aimed to go out into the community, fingers crossed we won't need to go back into restrictions and things, but, there is a question, I think, there's a question later on in the business component, in the business application, about in the event of worst case scenario that we go back into lockdown, what kind of considerations has the partnership made to change the project? Obviously, that's not what you write in there is not set in concrete, but it's just about making sure that you've thought about that as a possibility in the future, which we hope will never have to be realised. But yeah, ideally, ultimately it's whatever works for the project, the artist and the business. We would love it if there was some actual interaction. And if there is, there needs to be a plan B, but don't spend weeks on working out your plan B. It's just, some rough ideas sort of thing.
Okay.
And hopefully, as I said, hopefully we won't need to worry about plan B.
Okay, great. Thank you.
feel free to get in touch with me with any questions. I am only 2 days a week, but I will get to your questions as soon as possible. But I guess the main things at the moment, if you're an artist, pop in an EOI because it is super simple. If you're a business, start thinking about your partnerships and who you might get involved with. And from Monday, the 1st of February, I will be able to provide you with a list of artists if you haven't already got someone in mind, and really just start thinking and start talking and come up with some fabulous ideas. I'm looking forward to reading them all.